Hey guys, this is Dave with Audio In. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Cvj Freedom, which is their latest hybrid release. And it wasn't too long ago that I reviewed the May, and like the Freedom, it also implements tuning switches, but they did take a slightly different approach with the tuning of the Freedom, and we will get into that. But first, let's go over what's included in the box. Of course, we have the IEMs and cable. It also comes with a small assortment of tips, a soft carrying pouch, and a tool to change the switches. As for price, specifications, and design, the Freedom comes in at $79. It has a 5-driver hybrid configuration consisting of 1 dynamic driver and 4 balanced armature drivers. And as I had mentioned a moment ago, it has 2 tuning switches on the back of each housing that gives you 4 different tuning configurations. The shell itself is made from a combination of resin and metal and feels fairly robust, but it is still relatively light. As for the cable, it's actually really nice considering the $79 price. It has a 2-pin connection at the earpiece, but what's really cool is that it gives you interchangeable 3.5, 4.4, and 2.5 terminations. So I really think that's a nice touch. As for the design, there are 2 color options to choose from, green or black. I prefer the green, although I do think the black looks pretty cool too. But as far as the overall design and build of both the IEM and the modular cable and the different color options they offer, considering the Freedom, again, it only costs $79. To me, the overall quality seems to be better than what I would typically expect to see at this price. Okay, let's talk about the sound of the Cvj Freedom. The Freedom has, again, 2 tuning switches and it offers 4 different tuning modes. However, essentially, you really only have 2 different tuning modes, but just to be thorough, I will quickly go over the differences between all 4, but I'm only going to focus my final sound analysis on the 2 positions that are the most different. We'll go over position 1 first, because this was the position the switches were in out of the box. And this is with both switches in the off position, which only activates 1 BA driver and the dynamic driver. Now, this configuration is what I would consider to be V-shaped and is the most bass dominant of the 4. Position 2, or switch 1 up and switch 2 down, activates 2 BA drivers and the dynamic driver. And this signature is basically the same as position 1, but with a significant treble boost. So it's still a V-shaped signature, but now you've got some extra treble to help balance out the bass. Position 3, or switch 1 down and switch 2 up, is essentially identical to position 1. As a matter of fact, I could hardly tell the difference between the 2. This position activates 3 BA drivers and the dynamic driver. Then position 4, or both switches up, activates all 4 of the BA drivers and the dynamic driver, so all of the drivers are active in this position. And this signature is essentially the same as position 2. So V-shape, but with a significant amount of treble to help balance out the bass. So since position 1 and 3 are basically identical, we'll just call that one signature. And the same goes for position 2 and 4. Since those are similar, we'll just focus on position 4 and we'll compare those 2. And I approached it this way because it makes the review process a lot easier, and it'll probably, well, hopefully, make it easier for you to follow me. We'll go over position 3 first. Again, this is a V-shaped signature, but the overall presentation is very bass dominant. It's also the least balanced of the 4 positions and the least natural sounding. On the positive side, though, the bass does have relatively good dynamics and slam, and although it's the least natural sounding of the 4 signatures, it doesn't sound completely unnatural, and the added low mid presence does add some richness to male vocals and some instruments that land there. And then as you move into the upper mids and treble, things do open up a little bit, but it does still have a somewhat veiled presentation. And I do wish it would have had just a little more ear gain as well. Now, as for detail retrieval, It's decent, but again, it does have a somewhat veiled presentation in general, and I just prefer the extra treble energy in position 4 over this position. The soundstage is a little more on the intimate side, so it's just below average in my opinion. Imaging and instrument separation is about average for this price, although instruments could use a little more focus. Now, in regards to how I personally feel about this signature, if I'm being honest, it wasn't my favorite of the 4. My favorite of the 4 was actually position 4. So let's talk about that position. So position 4 has a V-shaped presentation, and while it does still have some significant bass presence, as V-shapes usually do, it has a lot more energy in the presence and treble region, and that extra energy helps to offset the bass and mid-bass, giving it an overall more balanced presentation. However, it does still have some of the same issues as the other positions in the mid-bass and lower mids with bass bleed. And while that extra mid-bass presence does bring out the punch and impact with kick drums, and that extra lower mid energy adds richness to some male vocals and even some of the instruments that land there, it still lacks in detail and texture. Now, then as you move into the mids and upper mids, like the other positions, the ear gain could use a little more energy to help bring out vocals and instruments, but it definitely does help a lot more with the added energy in the presence region. And that energy carries through into the treble and upper treble as well. And again, we've talked about how that offsets the bass, but it also helps to bring out some much needed instrument and vocal detail. And of course, it gives you more stick attack and more energy to cymbal strikes. And in addition, again, there's more upper treble presence as well above 10K that adds some much needed air and sparkle. Now, the two main issues with this signature is, one, there is some unevenness in the mid-range that can cause vocals and instruments to sound a little unnatural. Two, while I definitely do appreciate the added treble energy, there might actually be a little too much treble energy that can cause some instruments to sound a little shrill and even a little bit forced. So while maybe the treble does seem to lack a little bit of control, I still think it's a good trade-off because that treble energy is needed. It adds that extra instrument and vocal detail, and again, it helps to balance out the bass. As for technicalities, there is definitely an improvement in detail levels over position 3, but it's still what I would consider to be about average for this price point. The soundstage is slightly more open in this position, but imaging is a little less focused than position 3. And again, I think the additional air and upper treble presence contributes to a more open presentation. But to sum things up, as I said before, position 4 was my preferred signature. And while there were some areas that could have used some improvement, it still engaged me. And I've said this many times. Sometimes the goal of a V-shape or fun signature is to give an exciting and engaging listening experience, which in the budget IEM realm can mean there will probably be a trade-off. So while you might have an exciting, fun listening experience, you might not get the most natural and tonally accurate experience. And again, at this price, I think that is acceptable to a certain degree. And in my opinion, the Freedom with the switches in position 4, it's not only acceptable, but actually good. As to whether it gets my recommendation, it's not a strong recommendation because I do think there are better IEMs out there at this price, like the Galileo or the Hexa. But as long as you know what you're getting into and what to expect, and you're looking for that fun and exciting presentation, then I think this will provide that. And again, the design and build and cable quality is just excellent at this price. Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please like this video, please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.